Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I'm with the Allegheny County Conservation District. Thanks for joining us for tonight's webinar, Local Government and Natural Resource Protection with Three Rivers Wet Weather and the Penn State Master Watershed Steward Program. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our website for future views, along with our other recorded webinars from these past few months. We will follow up with a message this week containing a link to the recorded webinar and further resources on these topics. This webinar is part 4 of a 4-part series advocating for your watershed. And if you haven't already, please check out the recordings from the previous 3 sessions on our website and spread the word to others. This series is meant to give participants an introductory look into some of the core activities undertaken by watershed or community groups and volunteers. Please feel free to type questions into the chat box at any time, and we will address at the end of the presentations. Now on to the fun part. Let's meet our speakers and dive in. Amy Quinn is a Pittsburgh native. At American University in Washington, D.C., she studied environmental science and political science. Following her undergrad, she worked as an environmental and safety permit manager in Cleveland, Ohio. Annie attended Duquesne University and received an MS degree in environmental science and management with a focus on conservation biology. Her last role was as an executive director at Jacobs Creek Watershed Association and currently works as the program manager at Three Rivers Wet Weather. Mary Wilson is the Penn State Master Watershed Steward Program Coordinator in Allegheny County. Also a native Pittsburgher, Mary has pursued studies and work that took her from northern New York to southern Florida. Much of her career has concentrated on environmental education and volunteer management in a variety of venues. The hills and waterways of Western PA provide the perfect setting to apply that background in her current position. Okay, thanks for being here to you both, and I will stop the share and pass the baton over to you.
Hi, welcome. Let me share my screen. All right, should be sharing my PowerPoint now. Can everyone see it? I'll assume yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yes, wonderful. All right, well, again, hello, my name is Annie Quinn. I am the program manager at Three Rivers Wet Weather. In my current role, and our nonprofit has existed for 20 years in the region, working on the sanitary, sewer, and stormwater issues of the region. And my talk today is going to be an opportunity to discuss and dissect my municipality and how I can make a difference, because we'll learn a lot about municipal structure here today. And I want to say that I am no expert, but technically I should say I'm an expert. 2 reasons why. One, I technically have a political science degree from American University, which should make me an authority on municipalities. But I just want to say the one thing about municipalities is that they're incredibly complicated. Why are we here today is because people like me can go to a 4-year degree program and come out and still have never heard the word borough in their lives. So when we're talking about this municipal structure, it's really important to understand that it is complex. It's okay to acknowledge that complexity. We are one of the most dense political environments in the country here in southwestern Pennsylvania. And I don't say that to scare you. I say it because it's a hurdle we have to overcome and we're going to work on together. That complexity is something that once you understand, we really can take advantage of and work within. So as you know, I was the executive director at Jacobs Creek Watershed Association, which means that I got to be a watershed manager, someone passionate about watersheds. And we had a really unique relationship with our municipality that I'll highlight in some of these slides, and also how 3 Years Wet Weather is working to address these issues as well. Why does this matter? Because we are all working together. It might be complex, but it doesn't mean we can't learn, right? So, outline of the presentation. Today, I'm going to walk you through the structure of municipalities across our region, most directly in southwestern Pennsylvania, how you can be involved in those municipalities, and then some really important municipal regulations that they're focusing on that I think directly align with the things that are important to all of us on this call today. So let's dig in. So types of local government. So municipality, that word, it actually does cover quite a different geography of types of government structures. So the biggest one, the one that is actually still technically called a municipality, is the county, right? So The cool thing about being in the state of Pennsylvania, to just back up a second, is that we've also always had a phrase in the watershed world where no matter where you stand, no matter where you are, you're always in a watershed. It's like our way of teaching that word watershed to people who are just learning it. And it's interesting to me because the same applies to municipalities. No matter where you stand, no matter where you are in a municipality. And often you're in a double municipality. You're in that county, the larger level, and then you're in one of these other versions of municipal governments. So we don't have unincorporated land in the state of Pennsylvania. Everywhere you are in a government, I promise. So they start at that big county level. There are 67 of those in the state of Pennsylvania. Based on how your county is population-wise, you could have a system of 3 commissioners, or you could have an executor like we have here with Ritz Fitzgerald. So it really depends on how many people you have to determine that government structure. And the reason there is that word that determines that is something called class, right? So having a class applies to all these categories of municipalities. So you can have a class of county, township, borough, and city. And what that class means is it says based on your size, it changes some of the ordinances, regulations that apply to you and how you may govern, right? So the way that works at the county level, we see is commissioners versus executor. The way it works at a township level, similarly, you could have 3 supervisors or you could have many commissioners. And so that size can be kind of determined by that big class number, which, like I said, population based. But here you see, and then we go down from county to township, right? So townships are those big regions. If you look at this map of Allegheny County, they're the big squares you see at the top, right? There are lots of land. And in general, a rule is more land, less people equals township, right? That's not always the case, but in general, it's a good method for kind of figuring out where you sit and where you're at. So you can see Moon Township called out here. They have a specific governmental structure. If you went to the township of East Huntington in Westmoreland County, they have 3 supervisors. So then you have something that's on the opposite end of that, usually more people than land. They're kind of like little mini cities. They're boroughs, right? And boroughs actually function a lot like your average city. They have a council. Sometimes you even have to live, even if your neighborhood is only 7 streets big, you have to live in those 7 streets to be allowed to run for that district for that council office, right? So this is where you get councils, and sometimes you have mayors in these situations as well. And boroughs often are smaller. So you see Carnegie Borough is a much smaller, more densely populated place. And then of course you have cities, and we all know the big hitter in the region is the city of Pittsburgh, but even the city of Pittsburgh has a class, and it's listed as 2nd class in the state of Pennsylvania, 1st class being Philadelphia in size and population. So what I want you to look at with this is how many little Bill Pedutos we have running around in this county, right? So it is a phenomenally complex system with all these different people, all these different officials, all these different managers are each and individually focused on how to run and manage their municipality. And we have 131 of them in Allegheny County. That's a lot. So who's actually in the seats running these places? Who's in charge? Well, you're a municipal elected official. These are the people who are elected into office based on our vote, right? So first, go and vote, it's coming up. But second, these elected officials are the ones that, based on that official popular vote, get put into office to run the municipal government. So you see the positions here that are most common for those situations: mayor, council members, supervisors, commissioners. They're the people that when you cast your vote, you would see their name. Yeah, I know there's other positions like sheriffs every now and then you have to pick and choose through, but these are the most common one for municipalities. Now, the one thing I want to say is first, just take a moment and look at the beautiful diversity of our region. We have a phenomenal set of individuals from all different backgrounds running the municipalities of our region. I think we should take that as a sense of pride for who we are here in Allegheny County. But also, I want to say that everyone on this slide is a human being and positive, right? And as a human being, it means that they're there for a very specific reason. They're there because, in general, most of them are volunteers. They're there not being paid. They're choosing, when I go for a hike in the woods, they're choosing to spend their evenings and their Saturdays and their Sundays, most likely, running and developing municipal policy, right? So these individuals have passions. They may have run because of a very small, important issue to them, a school bus stop where their kid gets on the bus, or a stop sign, the idea of how blight is being handled in the communities. They ran because they are passionate. So keeping in mind that they're there because they're excited to make change and make powerful decisions in their community is really important piece, right? So now that we know their people and we know who's running and we know who's elected, who else is helping run our municipal governments? Well, they can't do it all alone, because if you're really focused on those specific policy issues, there's still a lot of expertise needed to run a borough or a township. So municipal government then requires employees. So often these are the municipal staff. They are not elected. They do not even have to live in the community in which they work. It is a job. They are the CEO. Think of it like a bank. There's a board of directors, and then these are the people actually on the ground, setting up those Facebook pages, running your parks, managing the public works staff, helping to make sure the police have everything they need. All of those things are being handled by municipal staff. Here are some of the positions that are most common within that municipal staff layout. Municipal managers, municipal secretaries, treasuries. Now, the most important thing to understand is these people are appointed by the council members. And then I also want to just reiterate that not all townships and not all municipalities are made equal. And that sometimes is budget based, which means that you could have all these employees and more, hundreds more employees. And sometimes you could barely have a municipal manager that's part-time. Understanding the dynamics of your own municipality and the budget constraints that they have to determine the employees they have on staff is kind of an important piece for learning about your municipality and what you may be capable of. So now, all of these people have specialties and are trained. For instance, in Scottsdale Borough at Jacobs Creek, our municipal manager was an accountant. That meant when he came to municipal budget season, he was a rock star. But you know, when I went to talk to him about stormwater, glaze over the face, right? And it's not because he wasn't passionate, it's just because it's not something he's an expert in. So how do municipalities account for that change in their expertise? Well, they have municipal contracted services. And this is their way of accounting for the multitude of things that a municipality, every single one, is going to have to deal with, right? And so the way they say, I can't really bring an engineer on staff, engineers can be wicked expensive, lawyers, don't even get me started. So the way they account for that is by having these municipal contracted services. They bring in an engineer who only bill them for their time they're being used, but that engineer is actually housed in an engineering firm. So you see here on the slide a lot of the logos, and we talk about a complicated system here in Allegheny County. These individuals represent the majority of contracted services. In fact, these engineering firms, some of them in-house, have up to 6 municipalities that they are the municipal managers of, dispersed amongst their staff, right? But you also get tax collectors, water distribution, you have wastewater treatment. So in fact, all of 83 communities are all sending their municipal waste to Alkazan. So that would be a contracted service that that municipality has to get rid of their poop water, right? And then you have waste management. Just a plug to my friends at Connect. They just did a really cool report on recycling. I would check out their website to see it. So you now have all these experts that are hired to give their capabilities to the staff, which then deliver those messages to the council. And we've set up ourselves for an awesome municipal structure, but they don't have to do it alone, because even above them is an umbrella called a cog. And this is because when we work together, we know we get a better price, right? That's what it all comes down to at the cog level. And these started across the region because just like if you and your neighbor decide to get your roof replaced at the same time, you and your cog and your neighboring municipalities can get really cheap gravel and asphalt and salt, right? And some of the focuses of our municipalities are often on those very logistical challenges that we find, especially on our roadways. So cogs are an opportunity for collective bargaining, saying we'll buy this much stuff from you across these municipalities and you'll give it to us for a cheaper price. And then on top of that, cogs are now migrating and being really thoughtful about, well, we're a group of communities and sometimes we're situated along watersheds and sometimes we have stormwater issues that can be solved across our boundaries. And they're starting to move into that planning and coordination and technical assistance for their municipalities. So that kind of sums up municipalities across our region, what they look like, their structure, who's helping them do that. Now, let's talk about you, right? So you, citizen, would like to be involved. You'd like to learn about how to approach your municipality about something that you care about, that you want to be involved in, right? And one of the ways you can do that is just a quick speak and be heard, right? So I do recommend that you become informed first, but that isn't a requirement. One of the goals of this presentation is to dispel the complexity as being a barrier for your involvement in your municipal government. At Jacobs Creek, we had a very intimate and long-lasting relationship with our municipalities. And one of the ways you can start working towards that is just being informed. The cool thing is some of the things I'll show you later actually require your municipality to have a website dedicated to how they're dealing with stormwater. So go check it out, see what they're saying, see what they're talking about. They probably are talking about the cricks and creeks that you're working to protect as well. So once you get informed, feel out who your representative, maybe it's your neighbor, have them not over for a cup of tea, COVID, but do something. Introduce yourselves to them in a way that allows you to kick off that relationship. But then the very best advice is to physically attend or virtually attend a municipal meeting because they are eye-opening. If you've never heard of Robert's Rules, boy, are you going to learn a lot about Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules is the structure in which we run a government that allows us to account for everyone's opinions and votes and make sure that questions and regard are given to all aspects of a decision, right? So you'll learn how that structure goes. You don't have to memorize it, I promise. Even I still don't know my Robert's Rules exactly, but it allows you to understand how a meeting runs. But meetings are also going to be publicized. It's requirements. It's in the state ordinances that you know when those meetings happen. And they're going to happen at a regular frequency. I can't give that frequency to you because it changes by municipality. When I worked with East Huntington Township, they met every other week. And gosh golly, if you didn't get there within the 5 minutes that they started that meeting, they literally ran through that agenda. I can't even describe how quick. And then they were done. And so you had to be in quick and out because they met so regularly. They were efficient in their processing of business. Not saying that longer meetings aren't efficient, but if you get yourself in a borough meeting, some of those can last late into the night. Some I've been attending that have been 6 hours long. So once a month can also be a frequency you might see. Public participation now. So you're at the meeting, you're attending, and you feel the need to speak. The good news is that's written into the agenda already. You're allowed to speak at your municipal meetings every time they're held. They usually have a time limit. Sometimes there's a sign-in. Sometimes they just want a heads up of how many people are registering at the meeting. Nothing in advance usually is necessary. And then you just, when they call out to the audience, public participation, often the sad thing is there are crickets, but if you're there and ready, stand up, tell them about your creek. Say, hi, I'm Annie. I care about Jacobs Creek. Let's talk about why I care about it and what I'd like to see happen to protect it. It's as simple as that. And in 2 minutes, you can say whatever you like about that topic. So raise your hand and get in line. And then there's the idea of being more. There's public participation that takes it to the next level, a public presentation. This is if you want to really dig in and you have an expert opinion about something that you want the council to move on, to change on, and to develop on. And this, you do have to get on the agenda. Warning and alert, sometimes they have a meeting the week prior called an agenda meeting. So just figure it out. My best advice is to be best friends with the municipal secretary. They know what they're doing and they'll tell you exactly how, the who, what, where, when, why of getting on that agenda. So I can't just stop there because once you speak and you start getting involved, I hope it becomes an addiction. I hope you feel it in your soul that you have become the person that wants to interact with their municipality on a more involved basis. And I hope you stay and be involved because municipalities across the region are looking and striving for people just like you. I'm not lying. I am not making it up. Every municipality I talked to was starved for parks and recreation committee members, shade tree committees. All of these people are looking for people just like you to jump on board. And there's a couple different ways to do that. There's committees and there's commissions. And those two things in general are just a group of people who pick a specific focus of the municipality and work with their passion and volunteering to get the job done, right? Those meetings are open to the public and your municipality can help you walk through how to be a member. Commissions are a little bit more serious than committees, but commissions, usually there has to be appointed members of your municipality on that commission. Sometimes they even have the ability to act with the authority of the municipality so they can get bigger acts of policy done. Whereas a committee, they're often the ones that are enacting a specific focus area, tree planting. So you could have a shade tree commission or committee. It really depends on your municipality and maybe who the leadership has been so far to determine that. Now, one of the other really cool committees and commissions that you'll hear a ton about later is the Environmental Action Committee. And I can't wait for you to hear Mary and her stories about that. So stay tuned as we learn more about that coming up. So once you've stayed and been involved, I hope that you are now flooded with municipal information and passion and love. And the next real big step that I even recommend is that you then stand up and lead. And I can't say that I've done this yet, but I want you all to consider that we, the scientists, water professionals, and even just passionate citizens who care about our environment should be the leaders of our region. And I hope you consider running for office. I can't give a ton of information about this because that would be something I'm not yet familiar with, but I do know there's others who know how to do it and know how to do it well. So for my Lady Plus friends, I recommend checking out Ready to Run Pennsylvania from Chatham University. It's a really cool resource teaching you the step-by-step process for becoming that next municipal elected official. And then don't be scared. I bet you're saying, I'm not gonna run for office, I'm attending this seminar. How educated could I be about this? True, true. But the cool thing is you don't need to be a jack of all trades. You are welcome to run for office based on the current level of knowledge that you have, because there are already people in place to make you the most educated municipal leader possible. The Local Government Academy actually has training classes for people just like you who are brand new elected officials. And then once you get there, those municipalities are not alone in just the cogs in their municipal structures. There's huge societies and organizations. I can't even describe the number of webinars these bad boys have put on. You will be the most efficient township supervisor the world has ever met, I promise. And check out these cool associations because they do provide a lot of resources on how to get the job done, right? So now you know all about municipal structures. Now you know all about public participation and how to stand up and lead. I want to switch gears now to municipal regulations. And the reason this is the end of my presentation is because it is super important. The reason we have to talk about municipal regulations is that turns out the secret on the street is that your municipalities are actually dealing with some of the very same things you watershed groups are hoping could be the priority of your region, right? And I see a direct correlation, a direct opportunity for watershed groups to come alongside our municipalities and provide not only the expertise, but additional funding and hands on deck for us to get these municipal regulations addressed. And there are big ones. All right, so I apologize. You can't talk about municipal regulations without just a quick hint of the history of water in our region, right? So keep in mind, we are a water-rich society. We used to be a pastoral, beautiful, forested landscape that was just a fort. Even before that, there was no fort. So as we developed over time, we also changed the technologies of that development, right? So we went from being just a few group of people who could probably poop in the woods and no one would notice to too many people for anyone to be pooping in the woods. And where should we send it? That's what rivers are for. Dilution is the solution to pollution, was a belief for a really long time. And then you have today, right? And we know that over the course of that evolution, we also learned that our rivers can be directly affected by human activities. And so all of that development and all of that industry and all of that influx of change in our region meant that we also changed how we dealt with our rivers. So instead of them being the quick transport of our feces folly, right? Our job was to then put those bad boys in a pipe and send them off. So as you can see, our region has a lot of water, and I learned a lot in a webinar last night hosted by Power that was discussing all about how our climate is changing, and that change can involve a lot more rain and a lot more extreme events. So our region had a lot of rivers. On the right is a graphic that actually showed if Pittsburgh had not redeveloped its system to be mostly paved, this is how many creeks and cricks we'd have flowing through our neighborhoods. And then, as you can see, Pennsylvania itself is an incredibly water-rich society. And that water-rich society means we're also a stormwater-rich society. So You hear a little bit about droughts, but that's not our primary concern here in Pennsylvania. Our primary concern is flooding and overflows. So now let's talk about some of the follies of this quick and thoughtful development over the last couple hundred years. So as you got more and more people coming to the region, you got more and more people coming to the region. And those people themselves had biological processes that needed to be dealt with. And as I mentioned, we had to have them go somewhere. So we developed a huge, intricate pipe system. And then in 1959, just take note of that date, that was 10 years after my dad was born. So, you know, not a long time ago, we were still not doing, proper poop processing. But you have all these pipes and all these municipalities that started turning their attention to developing a regional authority that would allow them to transport that waste in a way that could get it out of our rivers. So this is the Alakazam Service Region. 83 municipalities, 83 Little Bill Pedutos, 83 Ritz Fitzgeralds, 83 council chambers, all of the 83 municipality borough public works guys, all of them running around with pipes that are flowing to a single treatment facility. And then that's 836,000 people that are producing 250 million gallons of waste a day. That's a lot of people. It's 4,000 miles of sewers. So this is why that complexity of municipalities is so overwhelming to people like me who are actually like employed water professionals. We look at this and we can't figure out a path forward. And that's really where Three Rivers Wet Weather stepped in. Three Rivers Wet Weather developed the very first map of the region. And in that map, we were looking for what is Alakazam and where is it flowing and where is the pipes going. And so we were here to put this map together. You can see there's a couple things I think are interesting. Interceptor pipes, which I mentioned on the last slide, they can be up to 12 feet wide. That's a lot of poo, right? So 12 feet wide pipes. And then look how complicated. This map is not streets. This map, that's an underlayer. What you are looking at are the pipe systems under your streets that are handling just waste, right? And stormwater. It's a lot. This is Mount Washington zoomed in. Every house has a lateral that connects to a pipe, that connects to a pipe, that connects to a pipe, that connects to a trunk sewer, that connects to Alakazam. I recommend checking out our app online called Flush It. It's a really cool resource that allows you to determine when you flush the toilet, where does it go. But I also want to draw your attention on your slide to something that's a big issue. See those green dots? Those are called overflows. And the problem is we developed a technology over the course of time because our goal was to get the waste out of the river. But the problem is we just kept building more and more people without really the advancement of that system or the investment in that infrastructure. And so overflows occurred. And overflows are when there's too much poop in the pipe and too much rain in the pipe, and the rain keeps coming and the people keep flushing. And as a result, you have an overflow into one of the rivers, right? And those overflows have been happening since our region really developed this system. We actually built them because we thought that they were a marvel of engineering, but then the EPA caught up with us, right? So the Clean Water Act actually got passed in the 1960s. And then, over the course of time, they started figuring out what that looked like in the 70s. And then it took until 1997 for them to finally turn their head and be like, hey, Pennsylvania, what are you up to over here? And that's when they started reviewing the overflow situation in the city of Pittsburgh and the greater Southwest Pennsylvania region. In that observation, they determined that we were really letting it hit the fan, right? And in a course of a year, we are overflowing 9 billion gallons of sewage into our rivers that can be triggered in as little as 1/10 of an inch of rain. That's probably not great for water quality and sustainability as a region. So the EPA acted quickly. They brought a big stick and they whacked the region on the head with it, with the threat of a lawsuit, right? You must fix this problem. And they had valid reason for doing that. We had culverted a ton of streams. We had also impaired a ton of streams. They had good reason for being here and good reason for yelling. I say that as a conservation biologist. So what did all that stick hitting result in? Well, it resulted in the Alakazam consent decree. The consent decree is actually from the EPA and the Department of Justice. It required Alkazan to come up with a wet weather plan for an expansion of their treatment plant to eliminate sanitary system overflows, we'll get to that, and combine sewer overflows to control and decrease them. So this Alkazan consent decree is something that Three Rivers Wet Weather worked really hard on. And it's something that we'd like to think of ourselves as experts in the region. Now, what does that mean? Well, the combined sewer system, as I mentioned, all one pipe, right? You flush, it rains, put it all in a pipe, send it to Alkazan. Well, the tricky thing about that is Alkazan, it can't sometimes make it there. There's just too much. And so a valve along the river will open up whenever it rains too much, and it will overflow directly into it. Often these are considered the older communities. We consider this the oldest version of the technology that we put in place. And they're often the low-lying communities along the rivers. We thought we advanced. We thought we learned a lesson. We thought when we built our suburbia, we would develop a better system of separated sanitary systems. And so this means that your sewage pipe is separate from your stormwater. And we were like, phew, we did it. We conquered that septic system problem, and we're sending only our sanitary to Alkazan. Well, the tricky thing is that these still have overflows. I'm looking at you, don't flush baby wipes, right? But they overflow, and sometimes when they overflow, then it's even more concentrated pollution into our creeks. And so they still have issues, and some of them are very old. If we're talking they were installed hundreds of years ago, some of them are a little newer, but still, some of these pipes are built with bricks. It's not a good situation, even they have their flaws. So this separated system still results in pollution issues. So that means that your municipality right now has a municipal consent order. And in that consent order, they are required to do specific things. And that includes some really exciting watershed opportunities, green infrastructure, stream removal and daylighting, which means they're gonna take streams out of pipes and make them above ground. That's what we want in the watershed world. That's an opportunity for restoration. Think about the overlap that you have. If your municipality is required to do this, how can we come alongside, help fund them, help man them, help volunteer them? There are a lot of opportunities there. I also want to say at Three Rivers Wet Weather, we acknowledge that there are gray options, and some of them are mistakenly put as gray. This I&I mitigation is an incredibly powerful tool. So even if your municipality isn't doing green infrastructure and stream removal, don't discard it, because I&I mitigation is going to be a powerful change in water quality in our region. Look at this, groundwater infiltration into our pipes is actually such a significant contribution of flow. And once we get that groundwater out, that means less sanitary is going in our creeks, and therefore our creeks are healthier. So green or gray, there are a lot of solutions. These consent orders are going to require that you have the opportunity to come alongside your municipality. And remember how I told you about that stormwater bit, about how we were so excited we installed these separate systems and phew, we finally solved all our regional problems? Well, that's not true either, because those separate systems have stormwater, and stormwater, it turns out, is a source of pollution as well. And so just because they're separated still doesn't mean we're off the hook. So your municipality could be a separate sanitary system, an MS4 community. If they are, it means that they have to now, in the next few years, treat and determine how to handle that stormwater, because they're no longer allowed to let it freely discharge. And guess what? They are required to do public education and outreach, public participation and involvement. Jacobs Creek actually found a really great home in our borough building with free internet and all of the utilities and a desk and a table and a conference room for our board meetings, because we were able to provide to the municipality as match their public education and outreach. This is a unique opportunity for water groups to come alongside municipalities and take this burden of expertise and say, I will educate the citizens. I will be the individual that provides this to you. So overall, your communities have these regulations that will bring them up to speed. And I also just want to bring MS4 is going to include a lot of other really cool things. Your municipality right now, you may think, wow, we're doing so much green infrastructure. I'm not saying that it's not genuine, because it's a regulation, but they are doing it. So nonetheless, this is an opportunity for our watershed groups and our friends and our passionate citizens to come alongside and really work together on those. You may even see stormwater fees, which means your municipality may have a fund of money that's dedicated to stream restoration. What a great world we live in, right? Where we could actually have the ability to create match and adjust and mend our streams with our municipality as a partner, right? So I want you to end this presentation with me saying, your municipalities are dealing with a lot, and we are all on the same team. And watershed groups and municipalities can really work together in a unique way that allows them to work on the things we care about in a way that allows you to get involved, and allows you to see the structure of a municipality, and allows you to thrive within it, right? So that's the end of my presentation. Again, my name is Annie Quinn. I'm the program manager at Three Rivers Wet Weather. And I think we're gonna turn it over to the, I think if I stop sharing, let me stop share and turn it back over to maybe Rebecca or Mary's jumping right in.
You're on, Mary.
All set? Okay. All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Annie. I hope you have a chance to catch your breath. Let me get a screen pulled up here. There we go. Alrighty. Well, good evening, everybody. I know that we're short a few people, but this is being recorded, so you're going to have a chance to see a full version of the program this evening via a link that Rebecca will be making available to you. Let me just introduce myself again. I'm Mary Wilson. I am the coordinator of the Master Watershed Steward Program in Allegheny County. It is a program of Penn State Extension, and I'm going to just have a quick introduction to the program. I'm going to be focusing in on one element of the extensive coverage of municipal functions that Annie covered. I'm going to be talking about environmental advisory councils and the opportunity that you can have for positive impact in your community in being involved with an environmental advisory council. But first, just a little background. The Master Watershed Steward Program has been in Allegheny County since 2016. The program is part of the extension program, which is a function of the land grant university nature of Penn State. And the point of the land grant university is that the information that is developed through science at the campus at State College and peripheral campuses needs to be shared with the public. And so extension is the way that the land grant universities do that. There is an extension office in each county within the state. And in the Allegheny County office, we have programs related to health and nutrition. The 4-H program is housed there. The Master Gardener program is housed there, and also the Master Watershed Steward program. The Master Watershed Steward program is not in every county in the state, but it is growing. So we now have a program in Allegheny County and another one in Westmoreland, Armstrong, and in Indiana. That's a joint program to the east of us. The program is designed to train and inform citizens to be volunteers within their community around watersheds and water quality in the streams and protection of good habitats. We work closely with partners such as the County Conservation District and Three Rivers Wet Weather in doing things like stream cleanups, streamside plantings, riparian buffer plantings, and a significant focus on education. So there is a website online at extension.psu.edu.programs, Watershed Stewards. And I have contact information available later, but let's get into the fun of the program. So I'm going to be talking about environmental advisory councils. A council in this case is interchangeable with the term committee that Annie was using, because this is a group of individuals that are appointed by the elected officials of the municipality. And the general function of environmental advisory councils is to advise the council and related commissions within the municipality about the protection, conservation, management, and promotion and use of natural resources. So it's a pretty wide sweeping kind of organization, but individual municipalities have specific responsibilities that they might want to have their environmental advisory council focus on more than others. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. This is a tool that is mandated, or not mandated, but enabled by legislation. It's something that had to go through the state code And so in 1973, there was this Act 148 passed that enabled the establishment of environmental advisory councils. I am not going to drag you through all the legalese that entails, but it was updated in 1996 in Act 177. And they had some specific language in there about what they expected environmental advisory councils to do. So there are some guidelines, but again, those have some flexibility in them. Some of the functions that are outlined there are highlighted here. Some of them are expected to do programs and plans around the protection of specific natural resources and the quality of the environment. That might happen through making recommendations through the use of open or protection of open land. It might involve doing some education and outreach programming to the community and public, and that can come under the MS4, as Annie was saying. It also might be a matter of developing a catalog or index of sensitive areas, such as swamps, flood zones, steep slopes, and that kind of thing. That's a very interesting function for an environmental advisory council, because those are types of information that are not readily held within a municipality. So that's one function that is interesting to keep in mind. Similarly, the organization can advise the local municipal councils and boards on acquisition of property that might be valuable, for instance, in stormwater infiltration. The program last night talked about flood zones and the limitation of flooding or of water infiltration because of development of flood zones. The identification and protection of areas where water can infiltrate is something that might be an interesting function of an EAC as well. So let's look at some specific examples of municipalities within Allegheny County and how the EAC is described there. I'm particularly familiar with the Hampton Township Environmental Advisory Council. I served on that, and I'll have a case study from that in a little bit. But it describes on their website the responsibility of that EAC to review and land development applications to ensure that they are in compliance with environmental protection regulations. That can cover a lot of territory. I'll go through a list of the types of ordinances that are covered there in just a second, but I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a specific agenda. This agenda is for Franklin Park, and it covers a wide array of things. You'll see that it's spotter and lanternfly, glass recycling, plastics. But we're all struggling with what to do with our plastic waste products now. Landscaping can be a part of that, looking at the landscaping plan for a potential development. Also, the potential here in using landscaping to diminish noise. So it's looking at environmental features, not just in terms of a physical component, but the quality of life with noise in this case. So you can see that there's a wide array of topics that can be covered by an EAC. So these are some of the ordinances that might be under consideration if you do site plan review. The majority of these ordinances are going to come in the zoning code. And by the time you're done being on an EAC for any length of time, you know that code pretty well. And I would say that that's one of the most informative benefits, educational benefits of being on an EAC. You really start to understand code, ordinances, how they work, how they're developed, what their limitations are, what their strengths are, and how they are structured and have to be followed by any specific permutation, whether it's going to be a commercial development, a residential development, or even academic school type development. So this is just a selection of the majority of the environmental ordinances. So it goes from soil and steep slope protection and soil and erosion controls. It gets into vegetation here in terms of the tree protection. You'll have shade trees and parking lot trees, sidewalk plantings, that kind of thing, road, street trees. All of that would be coming under the EAC for review, making sure, for instance, in some cases that if you pull out a tree that is of a DBH diameter at breast height of 36 inches, you have to plant, in some cases, 6 large trees of a 4-inch diameter, or it might even be 10. It just depends on your local ordinance. But if you're looking at a specific proposal, you need to make sure that those specific codes are being met. And if they aren't being met, why not? If they could be met in a better way by using a different selection of trees within an a recommended list, you have a chance to get into that kind of detail sometimes as well. Annie was talking about stormwater management. You can see it's right here in one of the environmental ordinances, and this is a specific concern that is getting much more attention now. She mentioned the fee structure that is being implemented in some places. So it gives the municipality a bit more leverage to make sure that stormwater is being managed more effectively. Also, some ordinances contain a conservation plan option. That's not true in every municipality, but that is a place where there is a more concentrated development of the hard structure, the houses, the roads and driveways, and more green spaces reserved as a result of that concentrated development. That's commonly called a conservation subdivision. So these are some things that you would learn in great detail if you're on an EAC. This is really an interesting example of how a municipality can value the role of an EAC, because they think of EACs as having a specifically focused level of expertise. The language in Hampton now dictates that the kind and character of ground cover vegetation will be approved by the administration upon recommendation of the Environmental Advisory Council. And that is because EACs are concerned with soil and erosion control, correct, in this case. And people in that committee tend to know which plants are going to be more effective at holding soils. And so the ground cover function is usually to prevent erosion. The EAC has that as one of their levels of expertise. And so Hampton has basically said, we defer to you and your expertise for advising us on which plants are appropriate for ground cover to prevent erosion. So that gives you a sense of how the municipal managers and commissions, planning commissions, can look at this. There are a number of EACs in Allegheny County right now. Avalon Boroughs is apparently not active right now, but the other municipalities that are listed here do have active EACs. They, in some cases, have combined. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I'm going to pull up a map that will show you this in a different graphic. This map is from a website, and I'm not able to capture it because of copyright protection. I would have otherwise copied it and embedded it in the PowerPoint, but this shows you where the EACs are at the moment in the county, Allegheny County. It shows you some that are outside the county as well. But it also shows you that there's a lot of room around the county for additional environmental advisory councils. So clearly not every municipality has it. In fact, the vast minority of municipalities have EACs. So there's a lot of room to develop an EAC, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Let me go back and get that image shared. Alrighty, go down. I'm sorry. That's the one I wanted. All right. Based on that map, you can imagine that there is a great deal of opportunity out there for municipalities to establish EACs. And I'll talk a little bit about how that can happen in just a minute. But I wanted to share with you, if I can get that to go forward, an example of how an EAC can make a significant difference. In Hampton Township, where I was serving on the EAC, there was a proposal for a development of a site that presented a really specific logistical challenge. And I'm just going to go to one of these sites to show you, because the land that this property was being developed on was particularly problematic. And it had a topography that is very common in Western Pennsylvania. And it is something that I think most people would probably be very familiar with if they encounter this kind of setting in their area. You would feel right at home. This little development of duplex properties was built on the flat portion of this property. And as you proceed to the right, in this case, you drop over an extreme hill, I would almost say cliff, but not quite, very, very steep slope, to Willow Run, which is a little stream flowing down into the Pine Creek watershed, or it is in the Pine Creek watershed, it's flowing right into Pine Creek. On the other side is another little stream called Montour Run. So this property is being developed right on the top of a ridge. At one point, I noticed in the review of these, the plans, that there was a pipe proposed. This is the stormwater detention pond, but then they were saying that the sewer line was going to come right over the side here and go right over the side of the hill and connect with a big sewer line that comes down along Willow Run. It seemed the most efficient way to do it, I'm sure, because it's a straight shot. You have gravity working in your favor. But I think that this was just a pure oversight. There was a really significant problem with that. And the problem with that, and I'm actually going to turn off the share because I want to have you see this image a bit more effectively. If you're thinking in terms of disturbing a steep slope, you have to think very, very carefully about how that has to happen. And so what was not represented on that plan is what needed to be done to put that sewer line in. So I went to the council meeting making the decision on this plan, and I said, something that you might want to be aware of. And I don't think it was properly captured on this design. And I actually took a piece of foam to the meeting to show them my point. This is about the topography of the slope on that property. This is where they were talking about having the houses, but this is a very significant slope. And then it actually even drops off further as you go down to the stream, which is down here. If you wanted to put a pipe down this slope, you can't do it that way. It's 100 feet of vertical drop, and they could never have gotten equipment to go down that slope. They would have had to create a road going along the side of the hillside in order to, first of all, create the hole for the pipe, but then also to be able to manage the pipe. So in order to actually have a realistic representation, what they had to do was to cut away part of that hillside like this. They basically had to create a sheer cliff to make a road going diagonally down the slope. This would have had all the trees removed and would have been an erosion nightmare. So when that was brought to the attention of the municipality, they decided that didn't sound like such a good idea after all. And they went back to the designer in this case and said, what can we do differently? And what they ended up doing was reversing the flow of the sewer line and having it go out the other side of the development. And that was the right answer. They protected the steep slope, they put in a grinder pump, and probably had a little bit of maintenance involved in that. But the installation of the sewer line was less expensive and the steep slope was protected. And that is something that nobody in any of the other review of that plan had noticed. So that's a really great example of one situation where an environmental advisory council member who tends to think in topographic of mapping. I'm sure you all do too. You understand how to read a topographic map really effectively. Planning commissioners don't necessarily understand that. Township managers might not understand that as well as you do as well. So it's a really valuable function that you can bring to an EAC. So if you wanted to be involved in an EAC, how can you get involved? I think that Annie touched on a number of things, but I'd like to maybe drill into that a little bit more. See if this is something that's of interest to you by attending meetings. There are meetings being held somewhere near you, if not in your own municipality, as I mentioned. They are usually held once a month. They tend to have a very carefully planned agenda. And it will introduce you to how they discuss these proposals and review recommendations and all of that kind of thing. So listen and learn, the same lesson that Annie was making a suggestion of. Is this something you want to commit to? Talk to those people and find out what kind of time commitment is involved. What goes on in the meeting is usually just a part of the time that they're committing to the function as an EAC member. Is it something that you have time for? Do you have time to do a site walk if that's part of it? Do you have time to plan a recycling event, which is something they do in Moon Township? How much time do you have available, and how willing are you to commit that time? Then, if you've decided this is something that you're really interested in doing, check with the municipality. As Annie said, the secretary knows everything. They do. See if there is a list of candidates with any openings available on it, so that you can be put on that list as a candidate for the EAC or any other councils or commissions that you're interested in participating in. And then if you are selected, of course, they'll interview you and notify you through the proper channels. If you're selected on that EAC, give it all you've got. It is the most wonderful learning experience you're likely to have as a resident of a community. You will understand the way municipalities function in a way you never would have as just a regular resident. So I encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. And one consideration though, if you are in a meeting in front of a developer and there is something about that plan that you would personally not care for, but it's not in the ordinance, remember that you are representing the municipality. It's not your opinion that counts, it is the code that counts. So you need to be mindful of the fact that you are representing the municipality at all times if you're at that dais. If you don't necessarily think the code is being as effective at doing something as it could, quite often the EAC members have a chance to review the code when it is up for review and renewal or modification. So there is an opportunity quite often for EAC members to be a part of that process of improving the ordinances. So if you don't care for the way it is now, be part of the solution. If you're going to be involved in this process, there is help out there. I wanted to introduce you to what an EAC is, how some of them have different functions, give you an example of how an EAC can be of value in a specific case study. But finally, I want to let you know that there is an organization out there that can help you directly. The EAC Network is an organization that comes under the umbrella of the Pennsylvania Land Trust Association, PALTA, P-A-L-T-A. They now house, so to speak, the EAC network. And that EAC network has a wonderful handbook that's available at their website. And they also host a conference every year of all the different EACs across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's an extremely valuable, informative, and morale boosting experience because you get to talk and compare notes with other people that are trying to do the same work. So PALTA is to be credited with housing that organization. Now it was originally housed at the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. It's shifted a little bit, but it's a wonderful resource to keep in mind. It can introduce you to how to form an EAC if that's of interest, and also the different functions that can be completed within an EAC. So with that, I'm going to ask if there are any questions. There might be some that are accumulating. I want to thank you for your time this evening. I know everybody is zoomed out, but we are grateful that you have an interest in being engaged in your community and hope that this has been of help.
Thank you, Mary and Annie. I'm ready to run for office and start my own EAC. That was awesome. Thank you. Are there any questions? I saw in a comment, I think Palta might be now called Conserve PA. And we'll be, and we'll be sure to include links to either or and any of the resources that were mentioned. But yeah, last call for questions, and thanks to all of you for making your way here. And this presentation has been recorded and it will be sent in the follow-up tomorrow. All those Rebecca's aces out there. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mary and Annie. That was great.
Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure.
Take care.